honor to call him friend. He's had an incredible background in the Air Force as an intelligence officer. He debriefed generals and colonels on a daily basis. He was a courier to General Curtis LeMay. And he's had his own experiences in the Air Force, and you're going to hear one heck of a presentation today, so it's an honor to present the speaker to you.
Thank you. I've been into UFOs all my life, which is a little bit different than most people.
Sorry.
Oh, did we lose the... While we're working here, I'll just give you a basic idea. I put on a web page at National UFO Center that you're welcome to look at any time, but I also send out finalist files weekly, and I'm happy to send those to anybody. Sending out about 33,000 a week. I'm happy to put you on the list. And all my life has been around UFOs and aliens and so on, and I'll explain this to you. Started out when I was living in Maywood, Illinois, as a boy, about 5 years old. And I lived in this house here, apartment actually. I lived up on the second floor as a small boy, and used to look out this window, and you'll see the view out the window is actually a park across the street. Next. Well, that's me as a little boy. I've grown since then, so thanks. And I would look out on over in the park, and there'd be these like thousands of birds or insects or something forming up over the top of the trees in the park. Next. And they would come down and land in the park. And I would watch it with great anticipation. Here's our house. These houses weren't there at the time. And you could see out in the park, and just about right there, a craft would land. You can see next. And it was a disc-shaped craft, about 25 feet in diameter. And my friend John Fitzgerald and I were on our bicycles going back and forth and looking over in the park and seeing this object over there. Now, it was just about the time of the Second World War, so we thought it had to do something to do with the war and the fact that we were building new aircraft and this kind of thing. And I originally thought that it belonged to the United States. Actually, it may have. But in any case, we're riding our bicycle, and this fellow is standing there, and I don't know if you remember the old pilot outfits. They had the leather caps and the leather jackets and all one piece type thing. Well, standing there, and he's pointing at the craft over there, and he said, "Would you like to go over there?" So we said sure. So he took us over to the craft, and that said, "Would we like to go inside?" Next. And inside of the craft was very much like the kitchen that I had always seen. And now, the new kitchens all have all this shiny stainless steel type siding. In any case, everything inside of the craft was like that. They took us in and showed us around, and we thought, boy, that was really neat. America's really got some new stuff. They said, well, I'll be coming back, once a week or so. So the following week, almost the same situation happened. And this time I went back, and there was a beautiful blonde lady back there. And beautiful blonde lady replaced the man, and she basically said that she was my teacher, and that she was going to explain what was going on in the future. And that basically she said that her planet had a huge sun that was wearing up, and that every so often the sun would kind of explode, and each time it exploded or sent out all these large amounts of flash into space and so on, it would get dimmer and dimmer, and that they were looking for another planet to live on. And they had searched throughout the universe, so to speak, and they had found Earth and found what was one of the most beautiful planets, frankly, in the universe. And it sounds funny, but I was in kindergarten, so I would go to the kindergarten class each day, and we'd have show and tell. And the average student would get up there and say, you know, this is my teddy bear. Well, I had this exciting story about these aliens and the ships and everything. And I would tell them about what the aliens had to say, and I was kind of the star of the kindergarten class. Well,
were you communicating in English, or was it more telepathic to these people?
both telepathic and talking. I talked mostly, but they gave me information in my head. Sometimes they would talk.
Anybody else around here see it?
My mother's on.
But no, like reports on people
Well,
in the newspapers.
nobody in the newspapers or anything like that that I was aware of, but I was only 5 years old. But my friend John Fitzgerald had seen it and had been in the craft with me. And I told my mother, because she didn't want me to cross the street by myself, and she usually would, leave me across the street when I would go into the park. She didn't seem to mind that I went over and talked to the people. They looked just like us. As the lady in the back there with blonde was very similar to what she looks like. Now, of course, I get older. I'm living in Oak Park, Illinois, which you really realize this, but that's where Ernest Hemingway is from, and where Frank Lloyd Wright built many of his homes. And I delivered newspapers from the time I was like in third grade until I graduated from high school. But in the summer school, my friend Peter Greer asked us if I'd be willing to go to Florida with him, on a trip for a couple of weeks. And we drove down to Florida, and on the way we picked up a fella who was in the paperclip situation. Paperclip was the basically Nazi scientists who were working for the Nazis in World War II were hired by the United States. Some 9,000 German scientists came to the United States and helped us in many ways, building the moon, build missiles, and so on. And they had very advanced technology. And this individual, who was a friend of the driver of the man that we were going with, Peter Greer's father, had been in Germany prior to the war, and he knew this fellow who came to the United States after the war. And I was 17 years old, and this fellow was telling us about the V-2 rockets that they're firing, and also about the fact that they were out walking and saw a UFO, and explained to us that the Germans had advanced knowledge about the aliens, and they had given the Germans many advanced type equipment, and actually even UFOs. Now this one seemed to be manned by a little short rays. Next. And they saw these rays, and when they saw them, they jumped back in the craft and took off. Next. Now, I took flying lessons when I was interested in UFOs and airplanes and so on. So in any case, when I went to Bradley University, I got into ROTC and was eventually made a lieutenant in the Air Force. That's my first picture. It's the T-33 next. And it was at James Connolly Air Force Base, which was kind of interesting, and navigation training next. CV-186 here. Next. One of my jobs while I was there is that, I don't know exactly why, but I'd always been picked out to be a courier. And the couriers take briefcases like this, and they put you in handcuffs and handcuffs to the briefcase and take you to another place with very important information. This particular day I was asked to go to 12th Air Force, which was in Waco, Texas, bringing some information. And I came across this fellow here and asked him what his job was. And he said his job was to schedule the UFOs that flew in the Army Air Base. Thanks. The point is that people don't realize is that the United States very early had what we consider as UFOs. Next. Here's Gray Army Air Force Base at Fort Hood. They actually had this area with hangars, but they're hidden inside these like mountainous or hilly areas, and they kept it very secret from the people in general. Next. Here's a picture of some that we had. The ones that we had tails, horizontal and vertical stabilizers. But the problem with them is they weren't very stable, and they had a tendency to crash.
What kind of propulsion system?
Pardon me?
What kind of
Well, they have basically jet engines.
those were
Similar-
experimental aircraft?
Yeah, experimental aircraft, similar to what was used on the U-2 and some of our advanced jets were used in these craft. Next. After finishing navigation training, I was stationed in Athens, Greece. A lot of things happened there. Next. And sounds interesting, but even in Greece, UFOs were seen on a regular basis. And I became the assistant operations officer and the club officer and the class 6 officer, which is a liquor store. The interesting thing is that my commander, Captain Ramage, had flown B-25s in Korea. And while he was in Korea, he was telling me that the UFOs used to fly around them. Next. Actually, circle them. Circle their craft. Next. 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 You get the general idea that they were seen rather often in Korea. And that's one of the things that almost in any war they're seen on a regular basis. Next.
Did they interfere with the weapon systems?
Generally speaking, the UFOs will not bother you if you don't fire at them. If you fire at them, they generally will return the fire. Matter of fact, it appears that they say you fire a rocket at them, some way they're able to turn the rocket around and bring it back at you. They have technology that's, thousands of years ahead of us. From Athens, I was transferred to England and was flying tankers there. Next. What I look like then. Next. And flying tankers with 6 engines, several jets. And one day we were just finishing up a refueling mission, and London Control called us and asked us if we would participate in chasing a UFO over England. People may not realize it, but UFOs are seen all over the world, and England is one of the places that they're seen quite often. Next. So they cleared us, London Control cleared us with high priority through all the traffic towards the center of England, towards the Stonehenge area. Next. We were actually up here in orbit. They flew down to here about 100 miles, and we're at 33,000 feet. We're descending down to like 1,000 feet where the UFO is. UFOs are usually at very low level or very high level. Way above 50,000 feet. So, next. In any case, the radar picked up a huge UFO. I turned on I already had a radar on, but raised it up so that I could see directly ahead of us, and we picked up this huge radar return. I don't know how familiar you are with radar, but basically a bright spot indicates that the radar signal that's going on has hit something solid, concrete or metal, and the returns come back to us, and we're seeing it on the radar screen. Right? When I flew the normal missions over Scotland, we used to go over the Firth of Forth Bridge in Scotland, and it had a very distinctive return as a bridge. It's a bridge about a mile long, next. And it's a railroad bridge. And it was interesting that the radar return that we got on our radar and that London Control had on their radar was very much like the Firth of Forth Bridge, which would indicate that the object that we were chasing was about a mile long and a solid structure, probably of some kind of metal. Next. It was at, just as the sun was going down, and we could see this object out in space there, several miles ahead, roughly in this shape. In any case, it had lights on its side, pretty much like a ship at sea, and it was quite a huge object, obviously bigger than anything that at least we thought that the United States or any other country might have that was visiting us, probably from another planet. Next. At this time we're over Stonehenge area, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but Stonehenge has many sightings on a regular basis. Next. And then we got about 5 miles from the object, and it flew up into space. I don't know if you ever see the shuttle launch at night, but it was very much like that.
It flew that much, huh?
Yeah, it was a big, I don't know what they do exactly. They have lots of lights and lots of tremendous energy. So, and this is an idea of what it would probably look like in space. It may have been a disk, but from the from the side, it looked like a cigar. Now, it sounds funny, but we went back and reported it to the Air Force and put in the nav log and so on. Everybody was kind of laughing at us, you didn't really need to see a UFO and all that stuff, Most people don't believe in it, but I'm sure you've been there. If you're here, you probably believe in them, and people laugh at you a lot of times. Well, about a week later, we had a dining in, which is where the officers on the base get together, and we had a speaker, and the speaker was Prince Philip. And Prince Philip gave his talk, and at the end of his talk, he said, "I'd like to talk to the air crew that chased the UFO last week." And in any case, we sat down and had dessert with him and some cigars, and he was very interested in UFOs, and said that he made it a point whenever there was a chase that any air crew or pilots were involved with, he would try to visit them himself or else have his aides do it. That he had a strong indication that they were real and so on. I asked him why he thought they were real, and he said that his uncle who had raised him, Lord Mountbatten, who was the last viceroy in India, had seen them up close. And that later I found out that one had actually landed at his estate in England, and that he had also apparently seen them in India. Next. Now, one of the interesting things is that I decided to go to Stonehenge to see Stonehenge, but a lot of people are not aware of the fact that very close to Stonehenge are what are called curses. And curses are a mile long, and interestingly enough, they have almost the exact shape of the UFO that we saw. And this is like a 2,500 to 3,000 year old ancient curses, or that's a name that was given to it, but curses actually means like a racetrack in Roman wording, but they thought it was a racetrack. But I think it's that 3,000 years ago, the ancients saw what we saw, and maybe they even landed and decided to make a outline of it. And what they did is they dug holes like this, like 6 feet deep, all the way around it. So I think it may be that our ancients actually, you might say, worshipped, or at least felt that UFOs were very important. Thanks.
George, you said 6 feet deep. How wide was it?
Pardon me?
How wide was the trench?
Well, here's another picture of it. This is a mile long, and it's about 100 yards wide. About 100 yards wide and 5,000 feet long.
George?
Next.
George's question back here.
Another question, is that like the cargo call signs they call it, where the plane were in Guam or something, the natives are worshiping? In the Pacific, didn't they have natives worshiping the airplanes or something, and they call it cargo call?
Yeah, that's cargo call.
Cargo call out west, the natives would worship the U.S. planes, they call cargo planes or something.
Well,
It's a similar idea, like
the
the
Second World War, the people on the islands started worshiping our airplanes.
yeah, like the
It
similar.
would be
idea.
very easy to worship something that's a mile long. And even Stonehenge, if you think about it, now these craft that are a mile long, they're aircraft carriers, or motherships, and they carry discs, usually 20, 25 discs in them, and then they just spread out and, go various places. But if you think about it, Stonehenge and most of the ancient objects that were made by the ancients were in the shape of a disc or like that curses. It could indicate that they worshipped him. We don't know that for certain, but I'm just guessing that. The scientists claim that they worship the sun. That's possible. And I'm just saying that it's also possible that they worship UFOs. After I left England, I went to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, which I don't know if you're aware of it, but it was really where the moon project started, the Apollo projects. And one side of the base was all NASA, and where the astronauts were, and so on. Next. Tactical Air Command. When I was there, first I was flying refueling missions for a reconnaissance aircraft going into Cuba. And I was on a mission halfway between Key West and Cuba. And they called up the plane and they said that Captain Filer had to report immediately to General Sweeney's office at Langley Air Force Base. So as soon as we landed, they flew me back to Langley, and I went to General Sweeney's office, and I figured I was really in trouble. And what they wanted me for was that in England I had gained top secret clearances, part of the war plan, and I was one of the few people on the base that had these top secret clearances. And I was to be a courier, and I was to courier the pictures taken over Cuba from our aircraft that were landing on Langley, the film was, taken care of and analyzed and so on. And then the film was taken to General LeMay's office in Washington, D.C. And this was some of the film that we get. But basically, the Russians had put in medium-range missiles that could reach every city in the United States except for Seattle. And they had literally hundreds of missiles and SAM sites that they put in, Khrushchev had put into Cuba. And we were moving in, our IF-101s were flying a low level over these sites and taking pictures and bringing them back to General May, who then showed them to President Kennedy. Next. That was going back and forth between the two generals. And what was interesting is General LeMay was the head of the Air Force, and he would say to me, if they shoot down any of our planes, tell Sweeney that they're immediately to launch fighters and fighter bombers to attack Cuba. So I would go back and tell the story to General Sweeney, and he'd say, we're ready, our planes are loaded, we're ready to go. Go and tell General LeMay that we're ready. And I would take more pictures back to Sweeney, to General LeMay, who had beautiful secretaries, by the way. Best looking women I've ever seen in the Air Force were in General LeMay's office. Well, that's important. In any case, I'd go in and General LeMay and film the pictures and salute, and he'd say something rough to me, and I'd take it back to Sweeney. I was kind of right in the middle of the war. Well, we were going to, according to LeMay and Sweeney, we were going to attack Cuba. Thanks. And U-2 were shot down over Cuba. And I fully expected that, World War III was going to start. But President Kennedy said, no attacks, which was probably a smart thing to do at the time. Next. The Soviet S-75 missile shot down. One interesting thing is that, next, I don't know if you know much about intercepts, but we have something like 10,000 men who sit around listening to other countries' radio and communications. And the Cubans were saying that the U-2s are flying over Cuba that belong to the United States. And the United States was saying they must be alien. So I'm not sure who those UFOs were flying over Cuba, but there was plenty of UFOs being seen as well. And they tend to show up whenever there's these tense situations. Next. Now, it happened that in Japan, they were getting many sightings. And at Langley Air Force Base, there was F-106 fighter aircraft. And we sent some of our fighters over to Osawa, Japan, to try to intercept some of the UFOs that were flying into Japan. And they had some on their radar site. They launched a couple of fighters. It happens that I used to play bridge with one of the F-106 pilots. And in any case, they launched aircraft to go after the UFO, and they had orders to try to shoot it down. And next. In any case, 2 aircraft went out and 1 returned because it had engine problems. But the first one went ahead and intercepted the UFO and fired upon it. And they're hearing this on the radio that he's fired at the UFO and he thinks he's hit it direct center. And there's a big explosion. In any case, the UFO is not hurt, yes. They have some kind of electronic force field on it, and that most of the time, at least, if you fire at them, they're not really hurt. Next. Interestingly enough, the F-106 that fired at them did not return and crashed. Interestingly enough, they sent out aircraft, rescue aircraft to kind of find them. Sent out 3 rescue aircraft and none of them returned. Now, what happened to them, nobody knows for sure. Next. The point is that it's not a good idea to shoot at UFOs. Now, I mentioned that Langley, one side of the base was NASA, the Apollo program, and our people were working with the NASA people, and they found bases on the moon. Next. Here's probably pictures of a possible base. And then next. Not real clear pictures, but you get the idea. Next. I'll show you next. But also, NASA just released the information about the Apollo 11 when Aldrin went to the moon, and what Aldrin is saying, and he's saying that he's seeing UFOs and roads and like a base and so on. Now, Tactical Air Command is where I worked and briefed the generals, but if we fought Cuba, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was a strong indication we were going to attack Cuba. We had a war plan and everything ready to go. President Kennedy and other presidents didn't have us go ahead with it. But part of this was that Admiral Thomas Moore would have been in charge of that operation against Cuba. And we would have exercises, and I would go over there and have an exercise in the command post. And we would essentially be moving around fictitious planes and ships and so on, pretending that we were at war. Well, we're playing this war game, and they tell us declare at the command post. So we figure, well, what's going on? Right in the middle of our game, they stop it, and Admiral Moore comes in, and next. What was going on is that UFOs were seeing over the Atlantic Ocean, and the aircraft were going up trying to chase them, and the carriers were pretty much in a Navy operation. They were trying to, chase the UFOs over the Atlantic. Next. And some of our planes, F-14s, got up to them very close and took pictures of them. And the pictures that they were taken were sent back to the command post and shown to Admiral Moore. Next. One of the interesting things about it was that Admiral Moore asked if this was a Russian operation with us or we're doing this by ourselves. It's not generally known, but we're very close with the Russians and other countries when it comes to chasing UFOs. And that right now, aboard the International Space Station, there's Americans and Russians working together. And we have indications that there's spaceships that we have are manned by both Russians and Germans, there's Germans probably there too, and Americans who are allegedly fighting, at this point, some of the aliens that we consider to be bad guys. Next. In any case, at 7th Air Force in Vietnam, actually I had orders to be an F-4 backseat guy in their reconnaissance aircraft, and they pulled me on. One thing is you start being a briefer, they start grabbing you, and I ended up as a briefer for General Braun and General Bohmeyer for the year that I was there, which was during the Tet Offensive. Next. But there were UFOs seen rather regularly in Vietnam, and occasionally I would brief them about them. Usually they were up on the DMZ. And on several occasions, we lost either aircraft or boats tied into seeing the UFOs. Next. From Vietnam, I went to S.O.A.R Air Force Base, and again, I was a intelligence briefer, and through the C-line there. Next. And just to show that I was really there, really cared. Airlift Command, they awarded me then. Next. This was a command post, and every morning I would give a briefing to the first tower generals, and a lot of times senators would come in and congressmen and so on, and we would brief on what was going on. Now, about once a month or once every 2 months, I would brief that some of our air crews had seen UFOs and they were fighting, flying formation with our planes or above them or whatever. But pretty much like you, I don't know if you get the MUFON report or whatever, but it's pretty much the standard information. No inside information, just the fact that our air crews were seeing them, and they still see them on a regular basis. And a lot of commercial pilots see them on a regular basis. But if you're a commercial pilot, you say you're working for one of the airlines, and you say, I saw a UFO, and you go on TV, you probably won't have a job tomorrow. So you're not going to hear about it, but they'll call us, and actually Frank and I had some commercial pilots on radio with us. But if they're just about ready to retire, some of them will talk then. Now, I used to go to the Pentagon fairly often, and in the Pentagon, and near there's a place where all the spies send in their photographs, say like T-72, the new Russian tank, or the latest Russian aircraft. I would go there and get that information that I could bring back to my command post to brief to the generals. So I would get literally thousands of slides that I would use for these various briefings. So I asked if I could have some UFO slides to show in the briefings. They said, we have plenty of slides and we have plenty of gun camera film, but you can't have any unless General Catton, 4 stars, writes a letter saying that you are authorized. Next. We have the material that only a very small number of people in the Air Force, at least, have the need to know. Consequently, I had a good friend who was a 3-star general. He swore he had never been briefed about UFOs. We talked to our local congressman here. They had not been briefed about UFOs. The only one who knows a little bit is Hillary Clinton. And the reason she knows is because I used to send her my weekly files. And she was a friend of Lawrence Rockefeller, and Lawrence Rockefeller would have her out to his ranch and try to get the Clintons to release some of this information. I don't know if you're aware of it, but Hillary has said that when and if she becomes president, she will release some information about UFOs.
Didn't Jimmy Carter say that?
Pardon me?
Didn't Jimmy Carter say that too?
Yeah, Jimmy Carter said that too. And I know the guy who claims that he's got the job of briefing her, and they're trying to decide how much they're going to tell her. You're probably learning more than she's going to learn. Next. UFOs are a strict need to know. Only 4-star generals, and they have to be area commanders. In other words, control a large area. And they only pick out 3 or 4 people. I went back to Military Airlift Command headquarters and wrote a letter authorizing myself to have access to this information. I gave it to my boss, Colonel Dugan. He tore it up and threw it in the wastebasket. He said, you don't need to know. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm mad they never really let me on the inside information.
You know, as you're saying this, and on the one hand, you're saying there's this amazing secrecy, and it's all being gotten away with. Yet at the other hand, the pilots that are going out, and even the reconnaissance planes that are going out after them, they're not coming back. And so isn't there sort of like an underground that this information is sort of out there and
Well,
people are
this is the underground.
This is it right here? In the military, there isn't more like people who want to know?
Well, if you go to the officers club and you're drinking at the officers club, we'll sit around and almost everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
But On the other hand, if you report it and make a big deal about it and start asking questions, you won't get promoted.
George?
And if you're in a commercial airline, you won't keep your job. Yes.
George, the four-star general we met, General Johns, would he have had access to this?
Does he have, yeah, he would have access.
Because he knew about Sullivan Warden, but
He
we don't
did-
want to talk about
General
anything else.
Johns is the same, in other words, I work for General Canton, and General Johns is like the sixth commander later. Now they call it Air Mobility Command instead of Military Air Command.
George, you still have a question back
I
there?
had a question, I don't know if this is what I'm trying to answer, but is this just like visual information, or would they have like an actual down craft that it's so secret, that's why it's so secret, but it's like people say there's stuff in there in Air Force bases, of like down UFOs or whatever. I mean, was that, was there, did they have like that, would they have a downed aircraft, down UFO, that they've actually captured and put in the base somewhere? Is that like the highest secret?
Well, allegedly, there's
Physical, they captured
down UFO at Wright-Patterson Air
or
Force
something, I
Base.
don't know.
That was the place that they, one of the places where they collected it.
And that's why it's so secret, there's like.
The three-star general I know swore he didn't know anything about it. And he was the second in command of Wright-Patterson. It's kept very secret, and you're learning a lot that most people won't know.
Hopefully, they even issue internal, like you were talking, the internal documents.
Now, a lot of documents, Art's mentioned that a lot of documents are coming out. There's people who, retired from the military or from Lockheed or various NASA positions. That's where we're learning a lot of our information from. These people that are 80, 90 years old are willing to talk. Just to show you my wife and what I look like in uniform.
So you managed to lure one of the good-looking blondes from General Biden's office, right? There you go.
Well, I didn't mind her there. Actually, my wife looks a lot like the lady that I met who was an alien. I'm not sure that they really look that way, but when they present themselves to you, they have almost perfect features. And if you see somebody who's almost too good looking, think to yourself, I wonder if that's an alien, and see what they do. And I've done that a couple times, like at Macy's, I'm going down the escalator, and I said, I bet that woman's an alien. I'm thinking this to myself. I look over at her, she's 50 yards away, she looks at me coming down the escalator and running out of the store. Of course, she might have thought I looked terrible. But, well, Eagle Swan, I don't know if you know Eagle Swan, but he's a writer, and in any case, he told me to do that. I found that it really works, that we have aliens living among us. If you go to Walmart, you look around. To give you an idea of the kind of briefing that I would give the generals, pretty much like this, that In 1976, a UFO was seen near Tehran, Iran. Something like this. And it was changing colors. And thousands of people who lived in Tehran and north of Tehran could see the object. Next. At that time, we were friendly with Iran, and they had our F-4 aircraft, and they launched 2 F-4s to chase the UFO to see what it was and so on. Next. Lieutenant Perazi spots the UFO, and he's going to fire his weapons, but his instruments kind of stopped working and so on, so he turned around and went back. Next. This is the picture that they made of what it looked like. Kind of yellow thing with red lights coming around it, blue at both ends. This is one of their reports that we had. Next. There's some kind of electronic interference that they can send out from their craft. I've had it where we had our compasses went haywire and started spinning. Some of the other instruments on the instrument panel weren't working right. They have some capability on them. I don't know if it's because they want to do it or if it's just because they're so powerful. Next. Okay, the second F-4 went after it, was going to fire on it with a next at the object. And it suddenly admits like 4 objects, and the 4 objects come toward the F-4. Next. And he's going to fire sidewinder missiles, and actually tries to fire it, and nothing happened. It just didn't operate. So in any case, he returned to base. It's interesting that Lieutenant Jafari became a general and ended up talking about it at the National Press Club here in the United States about his attempting to knock down the UFO.
That was with Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project?
Pardon me?
With Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project.
I used it one of the projects, yeah, I don't know. In any case, he spoke in the National Press Club and said that somebody which really happened. At one time, this was a secret briefing that I briefed the generals, and later was downgraded. Next. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we have satellites in space and we're picking up UFOs on a regular basis, both coming into the atmosphere and going up out of the atmosphere. There's like a regular movement of these craft that I think they come in and they get resupplied. And they're seen fairly often over lakes or swimming pools or something like this and taking up water. Next. I was transferred to McGuire out here. Next. A lot of things have happened out at the bases, Fort Dix and next. Fort Dix is kind of shut down. It's pretty much reserve and National Guard now. But at one time they had tanks and everything there. Next. Headquarters next. And Lakehurst, now one of the reasons they kept the base is that they're all together. And each base is side by side, only a fence divides them. the various bases. Next. You notice that in the past, the Hindenburg used to land at Lakehurst. In 1937, the famous crash of the Hindenburg was there. Next. 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 You may not be aware of it, but a nuclear-tipped Bombark missile blew up there. Now, it didn't explode the nuclear weapon, but the dynamite and everything around it exploded. But some of the nuclear radiation, went into the ground and that kind of thing. When it's closed down, you can actually go by and see the old Bombark site. Next. There's a huge explosion. This is what it looks like today. It's all broken up. I mentioned some of these things that have happened in this area because the next thing is kind of exciting at McGuire. Next. Radar was picking up UFOs in a pattern pretty much standard. People don't realize it, but we have people who are in MUFON that work in the tower at the Philadelphia airport. And the tower has radar. Every day, almost without fail, they have objects going over at 80, 100,000 feet that they consider UFOs, and most likely are. Virtually every day, they're in our skies. Next. Next. Okay, the story is that at Fort Dix, a UFO landed a little while. I'll show you where it landed, and an alien got out, pretty much a gray type person. Next. And a security policeman from the Army happened to see him, told him to stop. He was in a classified area, told him to stop, and I don't know if the alien didn't understand it or whatever, but in any case, he kept on going, and the Army security policeman shot him. Next. Next. A UFO appeared to come in to try to pick him up, but the alien was running through the woods towards McGuire Air Force Base. In any case, reports of UFOs were quite strong. Next. And a whole group of Army types, plus the state police from New Jersey, started chasing him. And they chased him towards McGuire. And somehow he got through the fence at McGuire. There's only a fence dividing them. And he went on there and over. In any case, ended up on the runway at McGuire Air Force Base and was mortally wounded and died. A state policeman with a Air Force security policeman found him. Next. Next. And UFOs were in the traffic pattern and so on. They seem to be very upset about it, the fact that they lost one of their people. Next. And we found out about it in two different ways. A letter was sent by one of the security policemen to Mr. Sanderson and explained that he was out there and saw the alien. Now, you remember I was an intelligence briefer and I used to come in like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Next. And that morning on September 18, 1978, I came to work and I could see the fire trucks and all the lights going off and on the air base. Next. I went into the command post and I was told that, just what I just told you, that an alien had been found at the end of the runway and that a C-141 was coming in from Wright-Patterson to pick it up. And this is the plane that I was flying in McGuire. And I was surprised to hear that Wright-Patterson had C-141s. But those were the planes that could hold large objects. We could have like 2 Greyhound buses. Pretty big airplanes, nice. C-141 flew in to pick up the body next. Yeah, I'm coming on base now next. Now, most mornings they just wave you through. This particular morning they stop, check your ID card and all that kind of thing next. And I worked in this building, which was like 6 feet of reinforced concrete, and was told to brief the commander about the fact that this alien had been caught on base. Next. Picture of our command post there, and we would brief about what was going on, and I was told to brief about the alien. And just before I went on, they said don't brief it, that they want to keep it quiet, so to speak. I checked around and called other places on the base, to the security police, to the other, there's a wing command post, and they all confirmed that there, in fact, was an alien had been found on the base next. And interestingly enough, they were being picked up by the radar as well. Next. It's kind of funny, but planes as far away as Europe were picking up the fact that aliens were on the base. Yes.
What year did that happen?
1978. January 18th, 1978.
Was the New Jersey State patrolman, was he identified ever? The New Jersey State cop? What happened to him? I would assume he was sworn to secrecy?
I tried to find the state policeman who was involved, but never didn't really find him. I actually talked to 4 or 5 different state policemen and his local barracks, but he had retired by the time I tried to get him. The tower also could see him next.
Excuse me, when you say you're briefing general on these events, if you didn't have the first-hand account yourself, you're just briefing them, you're just passing along.
Right, I'm just passing information.
People are telling you. Or that
What
you're
would happen
gathering.
is that I would go to work like 4 o'clock in the morning and I would read intelligence reports sent out by, people don't realize it, but the State Department has a big intelligence section. That intelligence section is roughly equivalent to the CIA. Everything that comes from the State Department is highly classified.
You sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure, because I got information from there every day that was at least secret, which the news media forgets to mention.
George, we're just about there on time. If anybody has any questions, I'd like you to give them an opportunity to ask George any questions. You have about 10 minutes.
Well, you can see that essentially there was, as far as I could tell, an alien on the base. I did not see the alien, but I had talked to the individuals who saw it, and they claimed that they saw the rays and so on. And also talked to the guy who allegedly shot him. I did not talk to the state policeman. Any questions?
Who shot him? Was it the state?
Army.
Or was it Army?
Army policeman shot him. Yes.
Yeah, you talked about when you were small, eating these more or less normal looking ones. And then you also talked about the grays. Am I hearing that there's more than one kind that are like in conflict with each other, or
According to our sources, the ones that look like us, interestingly enough, claim that they are our ancestors, that we are essentially related to them, that they are like our grandmothers.
now which ones
And
are?
and that's the ones that look like us. The ones who are, you might say, against us are what's generally called the reptilians, that look pretty much like, imagine a humanoid looking reptilian. But there's, well, I've seen figures as high as 50 different alien groups visiting us. And that many of, and those groups claim that certain people on Earth are their ancestors, so to speak.
Are
In other
the
words,
ones helping our military though? Are they the good ones or the bad ones? Or is that open to interpretation?
the ones that helped us go to the moon and help us build spaceships and so on, and as far as that goes, apparently even helped the Germans, are the ones that look like us. Yes.
As a child, you were saying you were schooled by a female alien. What were the topics she was schooling you on?
Well, she essentially, the main thing is they said they were coming here. They don't have crime on their planet. There's no crime. Everyone, you might say, loves one another, and that the environment is very good. And they're afraid that we are messing up the environment on our planet. And they're particularly upset with nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants, that kind of thing, that you could easily destroy the planet doing that. And that they wanted us to take better care of our planet. They said when they come and take over, there will not be any crime on Earth. Now you can figure out how they do that.
When are they to come and take over?
Well, all they told me was that they're coming, apparently they're coming at least in small numbers already. And their planet is, it's not so much the planet, but their sun is dying, so their plants and everything are dying.
So maybe what you're just saying is partially the answer to that, is that if they believed in love, they would not have come to this planet thinking that they were going to be shot. But I was going to ask you, isn't there a contradiction perhaps in the vehicles that they're riding in are capable of avoiding detection or shooting down or one of our planes, or causing electromagnetic changes in our planes so that they can be captured, and yet one would land on Earth and be unprotected and capable of being shot? Some sort of contradiction.
Well, there is, frankly, contradictions. I mean, I was a 5-year-old, basically I didn't know anything. And they're telling me things, but if it's true what they told me, I don't know.
Yeah, but I just mean that everything you said up to the airman getting out of the plane and landing and walking on the soil in New Jersey, that their vehicles were capable of, avoiding ours in some way or causing us to shut down in some way, which certainly shows that they were self-protecting. And then to think that one would leave the vehicle and walk self-unprotected.
I don't know why walked outside or whatever. I suspect that they were getting food and water and so on. It's-
Do the chemtrails have anything to do with, are they behind it, or are we trying to block them?
Well, we often get pictures of chemtrails and we often see UFOs near them. I don't know the connection, if there is any. Supposedly we're doing the chemtrails
Right.
to protect the planet because of the warming. The idea is to put the clouds to keep the sun off the earth, so to speak.
You need to come next month for our guests. I mean, there's also talk, when you're talking about the military and you're saying which are helping, the good ones, the bad ones. There's also somewhat of belief that there's a whole spin-off and a sect of the military that isn't even in the main, that even your four-star generals don't barely know about.
Well,
They're really working with a lot of these people who are really trying to sabotage the space.
Well, there's some group wants this brought out, others don't. And
Do you have a website?
yeah, major, National UFO Center is a website.com. nationalufocenter.com. My email is majorstar@verizon.net. Happy to send you a weekly report.
Major Star at,
Verizon.net.
I'll post it on our meetup page so you'll be able to access it directly. We're going to have to finalize things.
Any other questions?
I'm going to have to invite you back.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, make a quick
Oh,
announcement.
so next week, before people leave, we're going to have Elena Freeland, who wrote the book, Chemtrails, HARP, and just the instruction of whatever, but it's really going to be fascinating because she's talking about how we're really creating rings around the planet Earth to create electromagnetic interference, very much like Saturn. I don't know if any of you have seen one of the latest David Icke talks about that, and I'm getting a book, a very hard to get book that talks about a NASA guy who was researching this, and there's images of actually these things being sprayed around Saturn. So that's our guest next week. We're very excited to have her. Next month, I keep saying this week. I think I want to have these every week instead of, right, so it's next, I think it's the 26th. So it's Elena Freeland. Next month, September 26th. Sorry.
You always have a lot of questions.